the arts flourished along the Silk Road in ways that still influence us today. Musical instruments traveled these routes, carrying melodies from one culture to another. The pipa, a pear-shaped lute that became central to Chinese classical music, actually originated in Persia and traveled eastward during the 4th and 5th centuries CE. Similarly, the Persian santur, a hammered dulcimer, found its way to China where it became the yangqin. In the markets and caravanserais, musicians from different lands would play together, blending scales and rhythms, creating fusion music centuries before the term existed. The Silk Road was, in many ways, humanity's first world music festival, a continuous exchange of artistic expression that enriched every culture it touched. Food and agriculture were transformed by Silk Road exchanges in ways we often take for granted today. Grapes and winemaking techniques traveled from the Mediterranean regions to China, where Tang Dynasty emperors became enthusiasts of wine culture. Peaches and apricots, native to China, journeyed westward and became staples of Persian and Mediterranean orchards. Carrots, originally purple or white, were cultivated in Afghanistan and Persia before Dutch growers in the 17th century developed the orange variety we know today. Pasta may have existed in various forms in both China and Italy independently, but noodle-making techniques certainly influenced each other through Silk Road contact. Every meal we eat today carries traces of this ancient exchange. The Silk Road reached its zenith during China's Tang Dynasty, which ruled from 618 to 907 CE. The Tang capital of Chang'an, modern-day Xi'an, became the world's largest and most cosmopolitan city, with a population exceeding 1 million people. Within its walls lived not just Chinese citizens, but Persian merchants, Arab traders, Korean scholars, Japanese monks, Indian mathematicians, and Turkish soldiers. The city contained Buddhist temples, Nestorian Christian churches, Zoroastrian fire temples, and Islamic mosques, all coexisting in remarkable religious tolerance. The Tang emperors encouraged this diversity, understanding that cultural exchange brought prosperity and innovation. Foreign fashions became trendy among Tang nobility. Persian-style clothing, Central Asian music, and exotic foods were all embraced enthusiastically. One of the most valuable sciences to travel the Silk Road was the knowledge of mathematics and astronomy. Indian mathematicians had developed the concept of zero and the decimal system by the 5th century CE, revolutionary ideas that transformed mathematical thinking. These concepts traveled westward through Persian scholars, who recognized their importance and incorporated them into Islamic mathematical traditions. By the 9th century, the great Islamic scholar Al-Khwarizmi was writing texts that would later be translated into Latin and revolutionize European mathematics. The very word algorithm comes from the Latinized version of his name, while algebra derives from the title of his book Al-Jabr. Without the Silk Road, this mathematical knowledge might have remained isolated, and the scientific revolution in Europe might have been delayed by centuries. The art of glassmaking provides another fascinating example of technological exchange. While glassmaking originated in Mesopotamia around 3500 BCE, different regions developed distinct techniques. Roman glassmakers perfected the art of glassblowing around the 1st century BCE, creating vessels of remarkable delicacy and beauty. These techniques spread eastward along the Silk Road, and Chinese artisans were amazed by this translucent material. However, Chinese glassmakers developed their own innovations, including the use of lead oxide to create glass with different properties. By the Tang Dynasty, workshops in China were producing both imported Western-style glass and uniquely Chinese varieties, and glass objects became prized diplomatic gifts exchanged between empires. The Silk Road also facilitated the exchange of medical knowledge that saved countless lives. Chinese acupuncture texts made their way westward, while Greek and Persian medical treatises traveled east. The great Persian physician Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, wrote his Canon of Medicine in the 11th century, which became the standard medical textbook in both the Islamic world and Europe for over 500 years. His work synthesized Greek, Roman, Persian, and Indian medical knowledge, a synthesis only possible because of the connections forged along the Silk Road. Medicinal herbs and drugs also traveled these routes. Rhubarb from China was prized in the West for its medicinal properties, while opium from the poppy fields of Central Asia became both medicine and, tragically, a source of addiction. The sophisticated irrigation systems and agricultural techniques developed in Central Asia were marvels of engineering. The Persians developed qanats, underground channels that could transport water for miles from mountain sources to arid plains without significant evaporation. This technology spread both east and west along the Silk Road. In the oases of the Taklamakan Desert, these irrigation systems enabled cities to flourish in places where rainfall was virtually non-existent. The careful management of water resources was the difference between prosperity and devastation, and the engineers who designed and maintained these systems were as valuable as any merchant carrying silk or gold. Perhaps no commodity better illustrates the cultural exchange of the Silk Road than ceramics. Chinese porcelain, with its translucent white body and delicate glazes, was a closely guarded secret, and for centuries, Western potters tried desperately to replicate it. Islamic potters developed their own innovations, creating lustrous glazes and intricate geometric patterns that influenced both Chinese and European ceramics. The famous blue and white porcelain that we associate with traditional Chinese pottery actually uses cobalt blue pigment that was imported from Persia. The designs often incorporated Islamic artistic motifs, creating a perfect fusion of Eastern and Western aesthetics. These precious vessels traveled in both directions along the Silk Road, and fragments of Chinese porcelain have been found in archaeological sites from Japan to East Africa. Let your thoughts drift like caravans across moonlit deserts, where cultures merged and transformed, where every exchange of goods carried with it the exchange of ideas, slowly, steadily building the world we know today.